no, I'm faculty council president, so glad to be here.
So the thing we were thinking of doing first, just to warm things up, is start by reading some of the comments that were submitted to us via that Google form. We'll keep that live and send out that link towards the end of the session in case you want to contribute something and you didn't get a chance tonight. So yeah, Susan and Nicole, do you want to start with that? Does that sound?
Susan, do we just want to start at the top and you want to do the first one and I've highlighted a second one to do?
Sure.
And we're going to do all of these anonymous. Some of them did not request to be anonymous, but I think at this point it's too hard to put those connections back together again. So we're just going to read comments from both faculty and staff.
And also if you have comments that you're feeling like you're ready to share after listening to your colleagues' comments that were written in, feel free to chat in the Q&A, type it into the chat. You can raise your hand and any one of those means you'd like to, and we'll take pauses periodically to hear from you all too.
So this is a comment from one of our colleagues, our coworkers. I love being back in the classroom as it makes such a difference in learning. What I do not love is sagging and non-CDC approved masks. I have asked students continuously to raise them as the latter, of course, to try to make their purchase last. With a Delta variant, good fitting, clean masks are essential. Can't the university supply these weekly to students who need them? A colleague brought a box for her students.
And we have a longer comment. I'm going to read just kind of the second half of it. I would like flexible working arrangements because I have anxiety that is only worsened exponentially by coming back to the office in person. As a mother of 2 children, I'm deeply concerned for them. They are not eligible to be vaccinated because of their age. They are preschool and school age, and I'm concerned that they could be exposed at school. If they are exposed, I will likely expose the staff. Oh, sorry, I would be exposed. And then without immediate knowledge of the exposure, I would come to work and could likely expose the staff in my department. I've shown that I have the ability to work remotely and still get the job done as if I was physically in the office. I feel it is necessary to keep me and the people around me safe. The Delta variant is much more contagious, and I really don't feel safe here in the office. 2 of my coworkers have already gotten COVID since being back in the office. How do I function worrying that I will be next?
And another comment. I also do not like that the students, rather than the university, has to notify the instructor when COVID hits them. Last fall semester, I had a case in my hybrid class where the student did not tell me, and I only got to learn about it from another student who told me he was safe to return. When I inquired, I was told that the tracer had misinformed the student that they would notify the instructor. The classroom had not been cleaned. When I brought this to the emergency management, they responded that it had been since it had been 10 days, all should be okay. The classroom is used by multiple courses. Another
colleague writes, this email has perfect timing. I'm currently sitting sequestered in my office crying as I have been for 2 hours. I just hung up with HR and was told nothing could be done without requesting ADA accommodations, and being extremely high risk isn't a legal disability. It is extremely difficult to get an ADA accommodation approved. We are required to be here 45 hours a week and have been since July 6th. With cases consistently increasing despite half the population being vaccinated, something must change. Currently, we have 1 person in quarantine because they were exposed last week to a positive case and they're experiencing symptoms. We've had a student enter the office today unmasked and have walked the halls that way before we asked her to put one on. Last week, we had a student who was removing her mask to talk, and the employee felt sorry for her because the mask was too big. We clean constantly, door handles and frames, furniture after every student who visits. When we walk into shared restrooms, students are unmasked for fresh air or to put makeup on while laughing, talking, or goofing off. We know masking isn't 100%. We know carriers can be asymptomatic. We know people aren't 100% honest with their symptoms. Oh, it's just allergies. And so, why is it okay that we put ourselves at risk in an academic office when people choose not to follow the rules? Yes, campus is testing weekly, but let's be honest, in that week, they can pick it up and spread it before it's caught on the next test. Yes, vaccine rates are up and can allow for milder cases, but for people who are at higher risk are still getting hit harder despite being vaccinated, some hospitalized and some losing their lives. If we've proven it could be done well, what more do you need? Allow us to be flexible now, not in 2 months, not next year, now. It isn't that hard to make this temporary change.
A flexible working arrangement would save 90 minutes of commuting time if I did not have to come in every day. I was more productive at home because of less distractions in the building. I have plenty of work that I can do at home that I do not physically need to be on campus for. The university has made it harder now to have flexible working arrangements, particularly while the pandemic is still a very serious problem. As a result, coming in 5 days a week and having to be in the building for 8 hours on top of commuting 90 minutes, it's draining. The pandemic showed that people can be productive employees and do some work from home without negative consequences. The university needs to reconsider the work landscape and requirements to be here every day. The system that has been in place for decades is outdated for a lot of people's positions when it comes to an 8-hour daily work requirement on campus. And flexibility would go a long way to helping employee retention.
My partner has to take immunosuppressive medication. We're both vaccinated, but because her medication and underlying factors, she's still at high risk for serious illness if she catches COVID. We know now that the vaccines still allow you to transmit the virus, especially the Delta variant. I have to go into a high-risk environment with unvaccinated students every day, and so every day risk transmitting the virus to her. They want us to think only in terms of what benefits the students. So think about this. If I catch and transmit the virus to my partner and it kills her, the students will lose the benefit of my services because I'll be checked into a psych ward or worse. I find it disgusting that the administration is using students as a cudgel against us. They say, quote, providing better services to students is all that's important to us, unquote, when what they mean is, quote, providing a safe working environment to the employees isn't important to us. Sick, grieving, and dead employees can't serve students. Let us work from home, pay staff to stay home, and while you're at it, mandate the vaccine.
Nicole, I've lost my place.
I had to go back to the other file because I had a hard time seeing the lines between them. Sorry.
Do we want to hear from, see if some folks want to speak from the group that's compiled here?
If you raise your hand or put a comment in or a Q&A, then I can unmute you and you can speak too.
And there's definitely a couple of themes coming out through here in terms of, asking for respect for faculty and staff and their needs, and just a feeling, I think, across all of these comments that faculty and staff are being ignored and our needs are being ignored. And I think that it comes through very clearly in a lot of these. Susan, I'll get you a couple more. I'll highlight them in the document for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have one hand raised from Tonya. Let's see. See if I can get this to work. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tanya Wertz-Orbaugh. I'm in the Department of Writing, Rhetoric, and Digital Studies. Thank you for having this webinar. I know I've been writing back and forth with you, Heather, and with you, Susan. We've been trying, and you all wrote that wonderful resolution to call for some flexible work arrangements, and so including, focused really on teaching, but so that people could teach at home if they needed to do that. And we got our answer from the provost, which was basically no. So my question is, what next? I mean, are we supposed to just lie down and take this? Or can we rise up and say, no, unacceptable. Your answer doesn't address the issues. I mean, I'm sitting here hearing just these few comments that you've read. So many people are struggling. It is not okay if a person has to sit in their office and cry because of anxiety, because of working conditions. I mean, this is awful. And I don't think we can let this, I don't know what we can do as far as process goes, but it seems to me we have to do something. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. Yes.
Yeah, I think part of this is really just, I feel like we often hear, like one of the comments said, what the students' perspectives are. And I've had several conversations with the administration about this, and that is the kind of, that's the emphasis. And we felt that even this, being able to get some faculty voices, some experiences out there to share with the chancellor and the provost and perhaps the board of governors, to really see what the faculty and staff are experiencing, I think might put that human face on it in a way that, you know, we've done a petition with the AAUP, we've got the resolution through faculty council, and those feel like they're falling on deaf ears. So this is our next strategy. We're not, you know, if you have suggestions, I would love to hear them, things that we think could have an impact. Other campuses are seeing the same challenge. So we're not alone at UNC Charlotte, but it is frustrating that we are at this situation.
So
Yeah, I love the idea of letting him come to our classrooms.
yeah, I think that's really, I think I want to push back a little bit. I don't think they're falling on deaf ears. I think that there is a very loud minority of students and parents who are being very vocal about demanding on a normal semester. So I think that there's competing voices that are being, you know, and they're very loud. Just to be honest with you, they are, you know, they call right into the chancellor's office, like, you know, want to, you know, have someone immediately respond to their concerns, you know. So I think that there's, I think the challenge and the hope for tonight is by using our voices in constructive ways, that because I think just knowing that how prevalent the concerns are and raising those up is a positive first step in kind of offering a counterbalance to the narrative that's out there right now.
I wanted to read some of the comments that came into the Q&A, and thank you, those of you, for those, and also for the chat too. It's a great discussion. Also, by the way, I have a letter from Raleigh from their sort of legal advisor on the vaccine mandate. I think it's dated in like July or early August, but before Pfizer was FDA approved, or the Pfizer vaccine was approved. So I would expect they need to be revisiting that at this point. There's not really a good reason. Their arguments don't really hold anymore. But this was one comment. Staff were required to return July 6th to locked restrooms, locked water fountains, no dining services, and empty buildings. The messaging from leadership does not match reality. We are not ready, and the employees are bearing the burden, as evidenced by the elevated attrition rate. We are intelligent people, and leadership can speak to us honestly about adapting the approach. Yeah, and I had a friend who's staff in another program and or another department, and she was saying that the sort of infantilizing is really infuriating. And she had some sort of email that basically said, you know, I'm glad, you know, welcome back to campus, and now you can get back to work, as if people haven't been working this whole time really, really hard. And then another comment, with more variants being recognized every day by the CDC, I find it disturbing that there is very little public acknowledgement that the pandemic is alive and very, very well. While the risk is primarily among the unvaccinated, hospitalizations and serious illness are increasing among vaccinated folks, enforcing 100% capacity seems both short-sighted and reckless. Booster shots are apparently coming, but I've yet to hear the university's response to booster shot records or for mandating the vaccine now that at least Pfizer is fully approved. I'm especially concerned for my friends and colleagues with young children, especially since in my household, as the only person who doesn't have the WFH accommodations, I'm the highest risk as a carrier and vector. Yeah, and I just wanted to add, that's my feelings too. Also, I check the New York Times like hospitalization rates kind of obsessively daily. It's really bad in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. They're at 95, 99% capacity. There's some hospitals with no ICU beds, actually a lot of them. So, you know, pandemics are not wars, they are chess games, and the hospital system is the queen. We cannot lose that. So yes, thank you for those.
And I do want to share.
Well, I just want to say to the person in this who just wants you to know that you definitely count as a staff member. And, we're all in this together. And I just want you to know that I just really, I just don't agree with that at all. And you do count. Well, you count a lot. And thank you for coming to work at UNC Charlotte every day, because we know that you could go to work at a lot of different places. So thank you.
Yeah, I think we're getting some really great, useful comments in here. And I want to just touch on one of them. Someone asks, someone says, I may be out of the loop, but do we truly know what students want? And I agree. I have had students, I offer them the option to do, I have to teach in person, and I offer the option for them to join us on Zoom. And many of them have told me how thankful they are to be able to do that, because they have, immunocompromised situations or other things. And of course, when students are testing positive, which they are, they then can just join the class that way. So I know that there are students who are very concerned and who are, not just the ones, it sounds, that are making a lot of noise to really be in person. So I think recognizing that diversity is really critical. We've got a lot of different students with different needs, and being able to find those accommodations is critical. And that's something that students are really struggling now. If they do need those accommodations and faculty are not able to or willing to do those accommodations, that becomes a big problem for them. So I appreciate that comment, that reminder about students. That's a group we haven't really engaged with on this issue as much as we'd like.
Yeah, and I think we can. I really appreciate the concerns from the library. I would, if our friend from the library wanted to come on, I would love to hear your voice in person, because I think the library provides such a critical service, and you really are on the front lines of major exposure. And so if you, I would love to hear your voice in this, and I appreciate your comments in the chat for sure.
Yeah, if you raise your hand, I can find you and unmute you if anybody wants to speak.
I'm not comfortable. I get it. You're totally, but I want you to know that I hear what you're saying about the library. And we had talked to, at one point there were major accommodations that were made in terms of moving books and all that kind of stuff. And so appreciate that.
Susan and Nicole, somebody pointed out that they're only seeing their own messages in the chat. Is that true for everyone else too? Because we should go back and read those, because they're really good. And I just got another comment through Q&A. They said, I'll also say that the research strongly supporting COVID as a vascular disease as opposed to a respiratory one. I feel like universities are turning into mass social experiments, yes, to find out the long-term effects of exposure and infection, i.e. long COVID. And I'm really concerned this is happening in the public schools too, to be honest. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Do you guys?
If you don't mind, I'll read the library one, since it is, I think, the way that the webinar is set up, you can only send it to the panelists. I'm in the library, and I would honestly like to see the chancellor and the provost, as well as other leadership, Bogdan even, walking around regularly, especially when our building count is over 1,000 individuals several times a day, and the mitigation testing is in full effect now, which we were told that the library didn't get a choice in the decision to make as a testing site. So for those of you who don't know, the library now has a site for doing that weekly testing. Supposedly students who are asymptomatic are supposed to go to health services, but it is a testing site right now, and they weren't given a choice at all. Now we walk around interacting with unvaccinated folks all day looking for the testing area because they aren't being told where to go for testing in a building with 11 floors.
Totally understand that concern.
And related to that, the library is packed with students taking covert online courses listed as face-to-face and banner. That's mine there. Many unmasked. I personally feel very unsafe in that building. So the idea that you're getting students in there who are watching their courses as well. And I see someone representing disability services. They've been flooded with students already. And I was looking through some of the procedures there. I'm not sure, if you want to give us more detail about how you're handling students who are coming in for accommodations. As I said, I've been talking to students who've had had some trouble kind of finding those accommodations as well. Sorry, Susan, what were you going to say?
No, I think we see a comment that Sobe Dining is also a testing site. And so kind of recognizing that there are people who work in these places that aren't, they're not medical places, and so that these sites they're designed for convenience for the students, which is understandable, but there are people who work in those places and that are not signed up for extra exposure. So I think that's a completely a concern that I had not thought of, and I'm so appreciative to bringing that. That is something that I think we can address immediately for sure.
Sam, you had something.
Sure. Hi, I'm trying not to overtake the conversation. I feel like I've commented a lot already, but so hi, my name is Sam Case. I'm a new faculty member in public health sciences. I've been in the UNC system for a long time, but one of the things that I am noticing that is interesting in terms of COVID response is that testing sites are not outdoors, and there are no options for faculty to teach outdoors. I mean, I'm lucky enough to teach a doctoral class this semester, and so I only have a few students, and so we will be outdoors if the weather is nice. But I know that NC State, which is where I was before, had those accommodations available, where faculty, especially those who were teaching very large classes, they set up large tents outside, and they taught in the outdoors, at least for a couple weeks before everything shut down. So I find that interesting as something that's not an option, or I don't know if it's been even thought of in this.
Well, so let me just tell you, we did do it last fall and spring, or fall, and the provost comment to it was that people didn't use it. So, but of course we weren't on campus, so why would people use it? So I think Sam, I think we need to go back and revisit that. Apparently there are some outdoor spaces, and the tents were too public. So, and the location of the tents was an issue. So that's a good point, Karen. So tents and location. Okay, got it.
Thank you.
I'm also seeing concern about crowded bathrooms that make it difficult. And I think that's that's the social distancing in a bathroom. I can see that being a concern about the crowded nature of that experience as well. So thank you for that comment.
What I'm going to do shortly is start copying and pasting some of the comments into a document so that we can see them, because I feel like I'm losing some in the chat now that I realize people can't see them. But
can we save the chat? We
oh yeah,
do that, right?
yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah, and I'll remove identifiers. But we have a couple of comments through Q&A. One is I feel that contact tracing efforts are not transparent. I also feel as though communication has not been as helpful or easy to find online. And there were a number of comments in the chat about the problems with contact tracing, putting that onus on students to let faculty know. It's a little strange. Another is that we have lost students come in looking for testing area in other buildings, and we also don't have anyone policing masks outside of the classrooms. And they take off their masks in the restrooms for fresh air and a break. So yeah, the masking inconsistency with the students is they don't have, so faculty have been told they can go into their offices and take off their masks. But if you're staff and you work in a communal area, or if you're a student, you don't have those private spaces to go to. And yeah, like being able to take off the mask once in a while has been, it is kind of a game changer. So allowing students to do some of their coursework online, I think, because they're wanting that too, at least having a balance of things. Let's see. Another is, this isn't going to be popular. Okay, these are my favorite comments. But please lobby to mandate the vaccine. There are many staff, faculty on campus who cannot get the vaccine due to health or other reasons. Losing our jobs because we cannot do this is unfair, especially since the vaccine doesn't stop the virus from spreading. Vaccinated folks can get the virus and spread it just as much as non-vaccinated folks. Also, given the fact that vaccinated people can spread the virus, why are we not testing vaccinated people as well as the unvaccinated? And I think Duke is a case in point about why that's effective. And my last comment, when I asked my group what we should do, I ended up quarantined. Oh, wait. When I asked my group what we should do if I ended up quarantined or had a large number of students quarantined, they didn't have an answer. I asked whether I could move from my hybrid to online in such circumstances and was told that I'm not able to change the mode of instruction on my own. Maybe they would get a substitute. It seems incredible that they don't have a plan B in case we end up in quarantine. And they said, sorry, I mean, don't lobby to mandate the vaccine. Okay, sorry. Okay, I understand. But yes, I think that was a concern that came up in some earlier comments before we drafted the resolution, is that there was very little transparency about what the university's plans were for different scenarios. And a particular one that came up a lot is, what if the public schools go back online? This was obviously devastating for anybody with kids, staff and faculty alike. And there was a lot of frustration that those who had a different household circumstance or who didn't have kids just really couldn't empathize. And there was a real sense that people were being gaslit, who were parents. So not having a sort of clear plan in place so that as things evolve, if it looks like we're going to end up in another lockdown, or if an individual faculty member is going to have to quarantine, to know that they're not having to invent rules on their own, which is what's happening right now, right? Like, we're all having to make executive decisions on our own about how we're going to handle circumstances. And just from the standpoint of managing a large organization, that's not a great way to go. Hierarchy serves a wonderful purpose when it works. So, but it's not functioning.
So, and I want everybody to know that a lot of the concerns that you're lifting up, we're seeing across every campus in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the call for flexibility is happening on almost every campus that I hear from faculty presidents across, that this, you know, the approach that we're online, you know, we're in person, you know, that's it is kind of been the message that's been across the system, frankly. I mean, that has been, it's not like there are campuses that are handling it significantly different than we are. In fact, you know, the inflexibility to move classes from in different formats is the same. You're seeing that concern across the system as well. So I will say that I have asked and requested that anybody who wants to be tested or having the vaccinated tested. And my understanding is because of the high number of unvaccinated, they're doing about 10,000 tests a week on unvaccinated students, that they just don't have the capacity to do vaccinated folks. And so again, we're brushing up against planning or lack of preparation, some of these issues that are problematic.
So someone has asked about our options, and I like that people are pushing for this, because I think, you know, we really would love to kind of take some next steps. The AAUP drafted a petition that we circulated a couple weeks ago about requesting flexible workspaces, and this was done. We sent it to the provost and the chancellor at the same time that Heather's group shared the resolution from faculty council. You know, as we said earlier, we haven't heard anything from that. We are happy to continue that petition and adding numbers to it. I believe we're up to like 142, so it's not a huge number, but just getting a sense of, you know, what the campus is thinking about this. If there's another petition that's being circulated, I would love to see that too, and be able to share that with the AAUP membership and others. And so I really think it is important to really show what the voices of the faculty are, either in terms of petitions or in terms of forum like this. But yeah, I would love to have some other ideas about next steps as well. What kind of actions we could take to really show that this is not acceptable for us.
And Heather, do you see some hands up in the chat of people that may want to speak?
Yes, I do. I'm going to go through, and there you go. Hi.
Hi, this is Jan Riemann. I'm in the Department of Writing, Rhetoric, and Digital Studies, and I'm also serving as the chair of class faculty council this year. Thank you for holding this, and thank you for everybody who keeps trying to get clarity on things. Two things that come to mind for me, well, three. One is when we get notices from upper administration about our classrooms. Thing came out the other day saying that faculty are never within 6 feet of their students. That is simply not true. I mean, could somebody come walk around a normal classroom of 22 students and one teacher who they're right there, they're right in front of us for an hour and 15 minutes or more. That's ridiculous. Two, I have spoken to faculty recently who've been contact traced and who've had to go out and pay for their own COVID tests, find their own COVID tests. This seems unfair to me. Like, if you're going to ask us to be in a position where we're putting ourselves at risk of contracting COVID, can the university provide some access to testing for us? We should not, and they're like, if you buy a home test, if you can find one, it's $25. If you can go, anyway, I think that's just problematic. And then finally, I mean, I think we just need to be more creative. We need to be more creative about how this can work. I mean, the university keeps insisting that this is normal. We're going back to school. We're online, or not, we're online, we're in person, we're doing it. And, honestly, I think that it's so hard because we all know this is not okay. It's not normal. It's incredibly stressful. And I honestly feel gaslit to some extent. Like, I feel I'm just being told, yeah, do it, just do it, go do it. And I have to honestly just suppress whatever fear or trepidation I have to go do my job. And I think that's a very unfair position to put people in. And something that occurred to me, like, what if we had a model where there's a bunch of students who want to be in class? Because there are a lot of students who are really benefiting from it. Could we not have the teachers Zoom in? And you could have a class full of students, but I don't know, there's we are smart people. There's tons of creative ways to make this university run. And I think that we need to be more open to, whoever's in charge to make these decisions needs to allow us to brainstorm more. There's tons of ways to do this. There really are.
Jan, I appreciate your energy and and the way you're putting forward solutions that are very helpful, because I think your idea of having groups of students and then the faculty person zooming in and maybe I think what you're thinking, those are kind of good. I think people are looking for solutions, and I think that's very, very helpful. And I think that we need to come back with that, be persistent. If we can't do this, can we do this? If we can't do this, can we do this? If we just come back with constant solutions to different situations. And so I appreciate that very much.
I just tried to unmute someone, but I think I might have accidentally messed up. So if you raise your hand again, if I didn't actually unmute you, then you can speak. There's some comments that came in through Q&A. I'll just go through and read these. They are sort of clustered in sort of categories. I called and emailed emergency management 3 days ago about someone coming in when they were symptomatic with close contact. I still haven't heard back. I've also been told contact tracing isn't returning calls. It certainly removes emergency from emergency management. And then I'm going to jump around in this a little bit. Does the university even care that there was a recent death of an employee on UNC campus? Why is the chancellor, provost, and every dean and department chair here to support us? I mean, I think there's probably practical reasons, but
yeah, I mean, we did schedule this at the last minute. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, but we did schedule at the last minute.
Yeah, but I think that sentiment has been with us for a year and a half. Let's see. I think Nicole, you sort of addressed this a little bit, but you said, I'm curious what our options are. We're drafting a petition to leadership in our department, but what is this group planning to do to address these concerns? And it's funny. I asked Susan the same exact thing. I'm like, what do we actually can do? So the resolution was one attempt. This hearing is another. I am very cynical about the nature of democracy in public universities, but I think Susan probably can speak better to that than me.
I mean, there are lots of other things we can do. I think that we're going to take the concerns that we're hearing today We can draft, yeah, we can draft more resolutions. We can have, I mean, there's lots of, again, we can try another petition. We can have, we can ask for other meetings. I mean, there's lots that we can do. I mean, and I want you to know, we will do those things. I mean, our intention is to stay at the table and engaged and try to work so that your voice is heard. So we're not giving up. There are things we can do. I mean, you know, I mean, there's lots of ways that we can show our voices. We can have a march on campus. We can have a collective, you know, there's actions that we can do to show that we have concerns.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I did reach out to the ACLU to see if they could spare somebody to attend this meeting tonight. And again, because it was so last minute, they couldn't. But they did refer us back to two other organizations that are focused on workplace equity issues. A lot of this overlapping with circumstances from the pandemic. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that some of these issues are systemic, right? Like they've been with us since long before the pandemic, but it's really hitting hard. I was talking to a mom friend of mine that, you know, I think this was in the spring when everything went into lockdown. She said, you know, moms would be throwing rocks at windows. We're so enraged, except we're too busy taking care of kids and exhausted. There were some more comments I wanted to read from the Q&A too. This is more an FYI. I came across people who were hesitant to sign the petition when I shared the information because it was unclear if there would be repercussions for doing so or if it was legit, etc. Perhaps consider inclusive language when communicating information so that others who believe in the cause feel comfortable supporting it in ways such as positions. I totally agree. And one of my big regrets with the Faculty Welfare Committee is I was sort of thinking very legalese about the partitions between Faculty Welfare Committee and Staff Council. And I think now that I know that role a little bit better, I wish that language on the initial resolution had been much more inclusive. So that's on me figuring things out. But I think that's a key point moving forward, is that this is affecting our entire campus community, faculty, staff, and students alike. So yeah, thank you for that. Why are they just denying the common sense way to handle the situation? Even allowing hybrid classes and rotating in-person work is better than full-time on campus. But cutting the number of people on campus by cutting the number of people on campus day to day. Even these smaller measures allows us to decrease risk, all the while continuing to perform our jobs optimally. Yep.
Excellent. And folks, just so you know, we have I don't know if you can see it, but we have 52 people on this call. There are people who care about this. And I mean, just the numbers of people who took the time to participate in this call tonight is an important crowbar or pressure point that we have in this as we try to have our concerns heard. Would anybody likes to raise their hand and speak? And you know, I really appreciate the voices that we've heard tonight. Very powerful, very powerful.
There's another comment in Q&A. They say they're canceling the chancellor's event because they still expect wide community spread. If it isn't safe to bring people in from the outside, how is it safe to have faculty, staff, and students on campus? And I was wondering about the football game this Friday too, to be honest, but.
Yeah, I think for the football game, they've increased at least the emphasis on wearing masks. So I don't believe much else has changed in terms of the format there. So I think there's a lot of concern about that.
They did cancel the student tailgating. There's like an area where the students tailgate, and they did cancel that. And that was like a really big deal for the students to have that canceled, you know, and, you know, I think so that was, you know, that was something that happened. I think that I do think you know, in addition to our football game, there's going to be 100,000 people coming into Charlotte for other football games in the Panthers Stadium. So, I mean, this tension with football is a real tension in our community between people who want to attend football and community spread. It's a real problem. It's a challenge.
I'm just going to paste this comment into chat because it's hard to read, but yeah, again, if you have things that you want to add, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll unmute you and see if we can hear your voice too. I can go back. I've finished copying and pasting all the comments into a doc. I mean, I downloaded them and then I was copying and pasting. So I'm just skimming through it to see. Actually, you know,
We
I
have
could.
a hand raised.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hi, this
Hey.
is Lee Amade in theater, and one of the things we've brought up in our in meetings is that with this the contact tracing is super problematic, especially for those of us in the performing arts, because I don't think that the contact tracers understand what we do, and that the risks in our classroom of spread are much more much, I don't know what the right word is larger, I guess, than what like your average math class, perhaps, because we are shouting, we're singing, even if we're masked, like it's spreading things in a different way, right? We're moving, and we have asked. I mean, I know I asked my chair this. I've asked, like, do they know that? And so, because when they're saying that they're as a potential close contact, potentially, right? That they're not notifying us if someone is exposed in our room, if we're being exposed, and it just feels extra unsafe, because we are in much closer proximity to students by the sheer nature of our jobs, and it just feels like an extra risk, and we're being we're operating without a net.
And I'll just add, one of the comments that came in through the form is from the School of Architecture, which kind of thinking about the different needs of different colleges and the different ways that programs are run. They rely obviously on in-person learning for some of their curriculum, as do a lot of other programs, most notably the Design Studio. And they're built on a design build pedagogy requiring significant fabrication access and levels of instruction that are not replicable without the in-person learning, I think they meant, and they're not replicable on Zoom. But that being said, we have a number of seminars and lecture courses that could support online learning, even though they're equally important to the studio experience. And so limiting the amount of content in these kind of courses would help to protect the success of our in-person design studio curriculum. So I think we're seeing still these calls for flexibility, that there are some courses where this makes sense to be in person, but other courses where it doesn't make sense, and really trying to find that balance. I think we're still seeing these in a lot of comments made today and on this forum.
So, and we're getting some questions. There's one, do we know if there's any recourse for faculty to move online? What counts as extenuating circumstances? We haven't gotten, I've asked for transparency into the criteria when you appeal. There have been people who have successfully appealed to be able to the provost to move online, but I don't know really what makes a successful case and what doesn't make a successful case. It's a completely fair question, and we're fighting to get that information so that we can understand it, how those decisions are made.
And just for clarity, because I think it's important for people to know, we've gotten an email from the provost through the academic affairs email listserv, and the process is to apply for accommodation through HR, through the ADA accommodation, and with the understanding that if it is not qualified for ADA, it will still go on to the provost's office, to academic affairs, for consideration. And I'm not sure what has happened to those cases kind of beyond the ADA office. I think we've seen some have been, as Susan was saying, for both staff and faculty accepted, and some have not, but we're not sure about the criteria or things like that. But that two-stage process, I was unclear about. You do have to apply for the ADA before it will be considered by the Academic Affairs Office. And so I got confirmation from the provost today that that is the appropriate process for doing that. So those who are interested, I Googled HR, UNCC accommodation, and the form and the page came up, and you're able to fill that out and submit that. So I just want to kind of clarify that is the process we've been told you should go through for this if you're looking to move your courses online for reasons related to COVID, which could include things around anxiety or other kinds of reasons.
And great point, Nicole. We have a question. Do we know what contact tracing looks like? For example, if a student goes to math tutoring during the day and works closely with a tutor, are they contacted? I have no idea how closely they look at students' multiple moves across campus. I think that actually most of the contact tracing relies on the students' disclosure of what they consider to be a close contact. And so, I think the close contact is like 15 minutes within 3 feet, something like that. And so it's up to the student to disclose what close contacts they've had. And so you've kind of identified a challenge for many people in contact tracing. My friend Sam, who's on here, who's in public health, could probably give us more information about this, but you really rely on the person who is providing the information for it to be accurate, an accurate reflection of what a close contact is. Oh, 15 minutes, 6 feet is a close contact. So that's what the CDC is, regardless of mass. So yeah, and that's a great question. I'll get an answer for us on what our definition of a close contact looks like here on campus to help answer that for us. That's a good question.
And I just want to add, I see a comment in the chat to everyone that not all these requests are being honored, and the question is kind of what the next step is. I do know there's an appeal process, and I'm not sure, having not gone through this, what that looks like or what people's experiences have been. But there are those resources.
Do staff have an appeal process?
No, they don't.
Oh, they
do. I did not hear of one. There was actually a comment from a staff member that says, I can tell you for SHRA staff, you must qualify for a disability that allows for teleworking, and COVID is not it. My physician said I do not qualify for teleworking accommodations despite being obese, diabetic, having autoimmune disorders, and had a previous pulmonary embolism. HR told me on Monday it is extremely hard to get this accommodation. My doctor proved that point Tuesday. So there's so many layers of problems that staff are facing. To my knowledge, there's not an avenue. If there's a staff member on here who knows that there is another avenue besides HR, that would be really useful to know, because I think a lot of staff don't know that, and I think we don't. One thing that I brought up, I can't remember who it was with, somebody, was, for instance, staff with children. If your child is a close contact to someone who's exposed and they have to do a quarantine, it's 10 days. If there's multiple exposures for a child, or if a school shuts down because of lots of exposures, that's going to eat up leave time, because to my knowledge, I don't know that there's allowances being made for that. Now it might be that they are, and they're communicating that to staff and not to faculty. But I'm really concerned about, that circumstance. So.
And I just added a little bit from the HR page. I know it's not ideal, it's what we have right now to work with, but they do encourage you to contact the benefits department around other kinds of eligibility, and that's not ideal. Right now I think we're in uncharted waters. They're trying, they're working with the Office of Disabilities for Students, they're working with HR, and nothing has been really in these offices around something like COVID. And so I think if we're trying to find solutions, and that I think that flexibility is really critical, pushing for that, and trying to make contact. I know we're all exhausted and tired, but the more we can kind of put pressure on, I think the more we'll hopefully be listened to. Though I wish I knew the magic bullet to really get this, so that people can be listened to and their needs be met.
No, I think we have a raised hand in the chat there.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm slacking because I'm reading the chat. Okay.
Heather's our pilot tonight. She's doing a great job. Can we give her a hand? Because she's really having to do a lot. I'm just sitting here, talking to people. So yeah,
Okay.
she's running the show.
Although I'm failing because I see that the hands are, oh, wait, I found one. Okay, there we go.
Hi, this is Karen. So I just wanted to, I guess, say a few things. I have a class that has 100 students in it, and luckily I have a door that goes outside so I can like cross ventilate. But I just do want to bring up the perspective from students who want to learn. Our number of students who say that they cannot learn from online classes. They're incredibly frustrated by the number of faculty who are having this kind of like silent revolution and like putting their courses online. And so, I absolutely agree that we need to protect staff and we need to protect ourselves. And so I just, I would like us to maybe come up with some specific things, right? So we can say, okay, if and first of all, let's try to get the vaccination rates up. So I put this in the chat twice, but I guess it got buried. But why can't we also push for testing twice a week, right? Chapel Hill does it. Already, I've had a number of students tell me I decided to go get the vaccine because I don't want to get tested. It's miserable, right? So I think if we pushed it to twice a week, I think we would get our vaccination rates up. And I think we should do that. And then I think we should incentivize students and say, if we can get our vaccination rates up, to 90%, then, you get X, you can have like a football game, assuming that the numbers are down. But we need to incentivize those numbers. And then I think we need to be clear with faculty, that these classes, at 100%, if they're in classrooms that are overcrowded, then faculty should have the right to turn it into a hybrid classroom. So they're still meeting, but at least it's safer. And I also have 2 children, one who is unvaccinated, told me yesterday on the bus, all the kids took down their masks to eat. So yeah, I just feel like it's the days are numbered before one of us in this household gets it. But if our children go remote, I think we need to ask specifically about this. If our children go remote, we should have a right to choose to move online. And I think like the more specific we are, because they're not being specific, it seems like we're the ones who need to be doing that work for them. And so if this happens, we want this accommodation. I think that would be helpful. Thanks.
That's a great point, Karen. And I can tell you as a mom too that who has a freshman in college, she definitely needed to be back in college. So I hear exactly what you're saying. This balance of trying to find the sweet spot to be flexible, but at the same time providing in-person instruction to the people that need it is your point is right on, and it requires some finesse and some specificity. You're exactly right about that. Hi, Deb.
I think you can unmute yourself, but let me know.
Yes, I can. As a staff member, I wanted to speak up. I know a lot of folks at my level in the university are extremely afraid of speaking up because we're all afraid that we're going to get reprimanded and lose our jobs. It makes me extremely angry. The little piece from the chat room there about, asking for an ADA accommodation is I did. I have 3 health comorbidity rate items that I asked for an ADA accommodation to stay home and work from home, even if it was part-time, just to help keep my risk low. And I was told that there was enough protection in place in the university that would preclude my needing to have an ADA accommodation. And I don't recall if there was a way to rebut that or not. If there was, it would be going through the whole panel with the HR, and I've been down that route before, and I don't care to do that again. It's uncomfortable. It's not an easy process, and all they do is keep pushing back, and pushing back on us, to the point that I would not be surprised if we did not have another shooting incident on campus someday, because we are all just so fed up with being having our buttons pushed and not being heard.
Yeah, and Deborah, I just want you to know that you're having a lot of people just shout out to you in the chat and say how much that you're not alone. And I think that's, I think one thing about this kind of format is just recognizing that we're not alone. Yeah, and that this is what you're experiencing is unacceptable. And so the first part of any change process is seeing the problem. And speaking the problem. And so you're doing that, and you're brave and you're an inspiration. So thank you for doing that. And we just need to come up with some ways to elevate these concerns for sure. We're going to do that.
I really like Karen's suggestion to get to some specific suggestions, and that could be around that HR process and the appeal process, and this should not be something that's going to drag on for a month or more, because these are things that we need to take care of immediately. This is, impending danger to our health. So I like the idea of kind of thinking about how do we frame this as a way to rethink that process? How do we make suggestions that can really simplify that process and really be clear about what are the criteria? So, what should you have to prove, in a sense? What kinds of, it just doesn't seem reasonable that we have to go above and beyond some kind of criteria that's unknown to us even, to try to prove that we need special accommodation. So thanks, Deb. That's really nice to kind of take that off. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think the comments in the chat that are saying, we were praised for doing such a great job online, and then now we're like any of that teleworking, progress that you're seeing, companies having the realization that, there's a better way to do this work-life home balance situation, and not every role requires everybody being on campus all the time. And so I think kind of, forcing us to grow in our work, the way we work, is something that we're just going to have to continue to push.
So I'm making, just so you know, we're at 7 o'clock. I kept this on till 7:30 in case we needed it, but I realized people are probably really tired. I'm making kind of a mental list of things to maybe include in another resolution. For staff members on this call, because Deborah's concerns brought up something that I was meaning to ask. I know that in our initial proposal, we suggested faculty should be able to work with their immediate department chair or supervisor to figure out what was needed. Those individuals know their faculty best. They know the students in that department best, so they can work together to balance out everyone's needs, students, faculty, and staff, right? Like that just seemed efficient. But I heard from some staff that, they don't always have sympathetic supervisors. My initial thought was staff should be able to work with their immediate supervisors to work that out and bypass ADA and bypass benefits office. But is there another avenue that maybe I don't know about that might be better, or give alternate avenues for figuring out those circumstances individually?
If I could just interject something there. I know that in our department, we are being told that the university will not allow us to work remotely. That's a flat no across the board.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't think, I'll be honest with you, I think it's not just our campus that has been, that decision is being made across multiple campuses. And so, we've got to really talk about why that decision's being made, and to what purpose does it serve? Really, like what purpose does that serve? So really, we're pushing and we're going to continue to push. And we're just, the chat is lit up. I love it. I love it.
And so it's the Q&A. There's a whole bunch of Q&A comments that we haven't got to. I just want to jump to some of these because they have some useful information. One of them is HR mentioned if your child tests positive, you qualify for PAL. The issue is that policies were changed to post-COVID months ago because numbers were decreasing. The board needs to recognize we are headed back into a terrible peak and reverse those newer policies. Yeah. And then let's see, I'm jumping around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's pressure for utilization, and I think what you're saying is right on. I think that there's some arbitrary and there's some arbitrary in-person number for face-to-face classes of 70%. For whatever reason, that was just a number sent down. That we ought to be operating at. So there's you can see how things are causing decisions to kind of fall down. And fall in place, and how we just need to kind of question why those exist, and again, who are they serving? Susan, that is our question. We have proven we can do our job 100% at home and rotating in office. What's the big deal about allowing a flexibility?
And Jim McGuire made a really important point that a lot of this has to do with office utilization. We're required to utilize the space. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we moved to Friday classes years ago. But going back to earlier points, there's very practical, creative solutions to this. I think Karen was mentioning, splitting to smaller class sizes and going back to hybrid if it makes sense for that particular class and that particular faculty member. When we all went online, I was like, there's so many kids in CMS who don't have access to internet to go to school online. We got mad Wi-Fi and space, but that didn't go anywhere. I think that was a logistical challenge that was beyond the university. But
so I think Sam had a comment. I don't mean to interrupt, but Sam has their hand up. If you don't mind, kind of going to a comment there. Go ahead.
Hi, again. So so I put in the Q&A something that will kind of sum up my thoughts, but calling to the space requirements and the teaching requirements, what I had heard, but I had not confirmed, was that in terms of online teaching accommodations for faculty, the rule was that in order to qualify as an in-person on-campus degree, at least 50% of instruction had to be in person. I don't know if anybody else has heard that, but in terms of like accreditation for in-person courses. The other piece that I think is the source of the frustration is, can we just please get some transparency from administration and from the Board of Governors as to why these decisions are being made, as opposed to just placating it to the importance of students having in-person instruction and everybody being excited to get back to work. Obviously, there's a fair number of people who are not, and we have been working, but it's what this is doing is creating a narrative in everybody's mind as to why decisions are being made or how decisions are being made. And so yeah, I'm in public health sciences, but my degree is in social psychology. So it just is creating an us versus them mentality, keeping everybody kind of in the dark as to why are these decisions being made, and having no forum other than you all, and thank you for that, for public comment and forum and discussion about those policies, and maybe even asking the people who those policies impact, as opposed to just going with whatever they see for whatever reason.
Yeah, I love Joanne's comment about faculty expertise. I did reach out to a colleague in public health to see if you all had published something or sent something to the chancellor this year about recommendations. I know a lot of you are online, but kind of thinking about, how do we communicate expertise? Because talking with the administration, I think they're relying on CDC guidance to make some of these decisions, even though they're not being clear what criteria specifically they're using. That's something that they've mentioned a couple times with me, that's what they're using. So, while they feel like they're relying on it, having expertise, I think would be really helpful. Go ahead, Susan.
So just, I think what's happening is that just my understanding of how a lot of this is getting done is the chancellors are meeting with representatives from the Department of Health and Human Services at the system level. And they're kind of all agreeing on their approach and kind of then going back. So a lot of the information that they're hearing is at the state level. And then my understanding is that the chancellor is also in close contact with our local health department here, but that's where a lot of the guidance is coming from. And you're seeing a very hands-off approach from the Department of Health and Human Services at the state level. They're kind of letting schools do what, it's really uneven the way it's being handled across the state in terms of, K-12, for example. So are we still in a state of emergency in North Carolina? Oh, I think it might have expired. I can get an answer to that question. That's a knowable question.
And Cooper did something
not.
recently with allowing schools to go online. So I believe he's reactivating some of that, but I don't think it's a full state of emergency. So I think that might be part of it. There's a comment that I'm interested in the Q&A, and sorry, I'm skipping ahead to that one. I think it's important that faculty members and other employees move from a position of making polite, if firm, requests and suggestions to administration to an organizing position, building power, i.e. numbers, building coalitions with other workers on campus and making demands. I would also add we could connect with other campuses too, since this is not unique to our campus from what I've seen from other AAUP chapters. It's difficult for people in a culture like ours that's based on collegiality and academic politeness to make the shift to that perspective, but it's really the only way in a situation like this. So I like that suggestion. I think that's something to keep in mind as we move forward.
And I just want to give a shout out to Celeste Corpening. I see her in the chat, and I just want to shout out to my sister over there and that leads the staff council. I just want to appreciate her for her leadership.
And Deb's been mentioning some other organizations like the local union, 150 Union, and I'm scrolling back up. You were talking about the People's Budget Coalition to really, pressure at different points within the system too. So there are efforts going on, though. I think it's hard for any of us to going day to day to really see them at all times. So I appreciate Deb kind of highlighting those efforts as well.
Yeah, and I want to just shout out that, I can see the microaggressions and the cuts that people are having to endure in some of their workplaces. And I see that, and that's not acceptable. And that's something, that kind of culture needs to be addressed. So I hear what you're saying about political action, and I think it's a both, just to be honest with you. I think it's a both and. I think we have to be non-threatening and productive at moments, and then I think at other moments we have to be collective and powerful. So I think it's a both and.
And can we get Celeste in here? There was a question directly to you on the GA and if it's okay with teleworking, and that the no teleworking policy thus now comes from the university itself at this point. We're hoping you might be able to clarify that either by speaking or in chat.
I believe that is GA's official policy, and that's what they have informed us of. Now, if something informal is taking place, I'm not aware of it. They are basically saying that they're leaving it up to the universities, and universities basically are saying that they're leaving it up to the departments to make those type of decisions. But the university has made an overall decision, and I can't speak to something if something's going on informally, but I think that's their official stance is that they're saying that they're encouraging it and they're leaving it up to universities to kind of dictate how it's employed.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Appreciate
So
that.
Celeste, what you're saying is there's a disconnect between what general administration is doing and the university's application of that policy. Am I hearing you correctly?
Well, you know, I'm not going to speak for anybody specifically. So, you know, the university, they may feel like they're being flexible, you know, based off of their individual standards. So I can't really say that they are or they're not. I mean, I won't say my opinion, but basically, I think you would have to advocate it at the university level if that's the stance of GA, that's theirs. And, you know, the chancellor makes her decisions and the people underneath her have to enforce those decisions. So I'm not going to say yes or no.
Okay. No,
You know,
that's
because
helpful.
I'm not
I
going to
didn't mean
speak from.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but what I hear you saying is it's a decision that can be made at the university level. That's what I hear you saying.
From what's been told to us, yes. And like I said, you know, stuff may be going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, but I think that's their official stance. So according to what they're saying, that it's up to the institutions to implement. Now, some of the sister institutions that I have actually spoken to, they seem to be pretty much on a parallel with what UNC Charlotte is doing. So.
Very helpful, Celeste. Thank you. And thank you for your service to the university. Really, really incredible.
There's a number of comments in Q&A. I didn't know if we wanted to try to get to those too, because some of them are. Let's see. Let's see. One is suggesting that the Founders Day would be a good day to organize a visible protest. Classes have been canceled, so faculty would be relatively free to organize something, and it would probably be socially distanced because classes are canceled. Another person pointed out that the HR website for disability accommodations is dated to 2016 and does not include the interactive process for disability accommodations in comparison to other North Carolina universities. It does not align with the ADA or Section 504. So I've copied and pasted all these Q&As. I'm not familiar with those, but these are going to be important things to look at.
We'll definitely. These are things that we can ask to be addressed for sure.
Let's see. Yes, there's another comment about filing a complaint that does not engage with the interactive practice. And then, let's see. Sorry, there's just like a lot of really great questions in here. Another thing, comment about transparency. At the very least, I think that more transparency as to plans and reasons behind decisions making for university policies are really important so that we're not making up our own narratives as to why decisions are being made. The anger and frustration is palpable. Make it clear why decisions are happening, make those decisions open for comment and discussion, and stop stonewalling staff, faculty, and students who are looking for answers. I think that's, yeah. And trying to figure out how we were struggling with this with the initial resolution is how do you put into that, be real frank and clear about what's going on. But I think we can actually at this stage sort of itemize things like we need to know in a few steps how contact tracing, this should be able to be a visible graphic, right? That anyone should be able to read. I mean, that's an accessibility issue. So let's see. And then HRC.
Hey,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and what I want you to keep on talking, but with our few minutes that we have left, you know, what would you consider a win to come out of this forum in the chat? Like if you would know that this would be successful, what would that look like to you tomorrow or a week from now? Like, how would you know that this forum was successful? If you could put that into the chat while Heather's talking about some of these comments, I would appreciate it, because that helps us to know what you're looking for to come out of this. So anyway, thank you. Go ahead, Heather.
Heather, you're muted.
Sorry. One comment that was accidentally sent to me privately says allow telecommuting for that. So I'm going to copy that in my notes. But another comment is HR seems really reluctant to have folks work online again, which seems odd to me given the fact that they have praised everyone for being so flexible. Oh, wait, did you read this already? Did I?
I summarized it.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. Some signage in the bathrooms remind students to keep their masks on, even in there would be good. So yeah, I think really practical things about enforcement on campus. With what Ali said, anyone coming into contact with the sports players at higher risk. The university picking and choosing which groups it puts out to Zoom and those cannot are arbitrary and seems more for appearance than any measure of care and concern. And then I just wanted to say I missed the first minutes, but it sounded like it was read based on a comment I heard. Oh, I was the person crying in my office this week. Thank you for reading and listening. Well, I'm glad you were able to make it, and I'm sorry that that's ditto for what it's worth.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you were the only person crying in your office this week or elsewhere. So,
Yeah.
you know,
We could do
thanks for
show of
sharing.
hands who didn't cry sometime in the last 2 weeks. Let's see. And then in terms, so going back to Susan's prompt for practical things that would constitute sort of a win, because we're going to take these things and try to draft another resolution. I think it's probably like better
Or
next
have
step.
a meeting where we kind of go over the concerns with administration. So
Yeah,
that we
just
ask for an
bypass.
in-person meeting. I mean, so, you know, we kind of, maybe we can separate them into certain buckets, you know,
Yeah.
and ask for responses. And so, and then I think some sort of something. I mean, I don't know that people want to hang around on campus on the Fridays after football, but if people do, I think that's something to think about too. If we want to have signs or, you know, some sort of collective action, we can do that too.
I wanted to interject one thing. You asked to put stuff in the chat, but I can't keep up with everything going on. And I think that the university should provide N95 or good quality masks to every faculty and staff person on campus. I think that should be a must.
Yeah, there's a question and the Q&A, is the campus operating under some kind of case count threshold? And they're not. We have been unable to get the chancellor to pin down any criteria that they're using around any change in operating procedure. So I certainly feel this. I know that our county rate is still over 14% positive tests. I get the answer that campus is different. And the, you know, the dashboard shows, I think, just a couple, 3 to 5% positivity rate, but they're not counting all 10,000 of those tests. So it's a little unclear what's actually happening on campus and what that threshold might be. But the chancellor has refused many times to elaborate what any of those criteria might be, saying there's just too many variables to keep in mind. And so sadly, there's not a count of how many have to be sick or how many have to die. It's so infuriating. But I'm sorry to answer that question with what we know, but we will keep pushing, because I think it's critical to kind of know, how are these decisions being made? At what point is it too dangerous for us to be in person? And so I think keeping pushing on that is part of this process too.
Right. And I think part of that is acknowledging that while the university is a particular unique community within Charlotte Mecklenburg County, we are not separate from it. All of us interface with the rest of the community through schools, through houses of worship, all kinds of different places. So I think acknowledging that we will contribute to those rising COVID cases and they'll impact us too. It's just practical public health. So I'm just copying and pasting comments.
No, there's a lot of really nice comments around, and I'm going to read one. I think a lot of people have responded to this one, if I can find it. Here's what success looks like. Staff and faculty are empowered to make their own safety decisions and to choose to work or teach remotely, period. That is all. I think we're seeing that in many places, as well as some requests for masks as was suggested, and getting a response that's not just a PR response from the chancellor or the other administration. And more than just one mask, since we do need different masks daily. We need more information about testing, access, contact tracing, more info on the dashboard, detailed, clever workarounds. It's not all or nothing, and I think that's clear. You know, I don't think there's much chance that we're all going to go online as soon as the census day happens tomorrow. I don't see that as happening from the language that I've seen, but you know, I think being able to find flexible arrangements that work for different people that's my goal. If I have to answer, what I would like to see is just the ability to have that flexibility. So I'm in agreement with a lot of you, and I'm hoping we can push for some of this. And there's also a question about the recording. So as we mentioned at the beginning, we were recording it. If for some reason you don't want any of your part of this, we will do some editing. Both Heather and I can play around with that and make it work. Right now we're talking about posting it on the AAUP chapter website, but there may be other locations if you are interested as well that we can put it. But that's the goal, is to have it available for those who are interested, especially the chancellor and provost and others. And we will be putting together a summary to share with them as well, so that they hear as much as possible some of the direct quotes, some of the concerns, and like Susan was talking about, kind of that enumeration of what are the kind of key elements. And then we'll follow that up with a discussion, I believe, with the chancellor and provost to really talk about what they can do to address these. And I like the idea of the accommodations for people who live away from campus, you know, thinking about all the different contexts in which we are. And that goes to some of the comments around trust in faculty and staff to be able to make decisions that work for them and their work. And recognizing that no one is okay. I feel that deeply. So I appreciate that sentiment as well. Okay, anything else from Heather or Susan? We're getting close to 7:30, so I don't, you know, I'd love to continue talking to people when I continue bringing things up, but I also feel like we're all kind of getting to the end of our very long days already. So Susan or Heather, do you want to say anything before we go?
Just so you know,
Yeah.
along with the video, I'll copy and paste and edit out names from the comments, because there really is great information. I know some of you weren't able to see some of them.
And thank you for coming tonight. I think there's power in our numbers that participated tonight. Just that in and of itself tells the story that you gave up your precious time in your evening to participate in this forum. Tells you that people are concerned, and that needs to be paid attention to in a significant way. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I hear you. Power concedes nothing without a demand. I'm right there with you, friend. There'll be some demands that come out of this. I promise on that. So, yep. Thanks for including our adjunct staff. Absolutely.
And I'm putting my email in the chat in case anyone wants to contact about. We'll remove the comments, so there won't be comments. We didn't mention anyone's name when we read those comments, but if someone who actually came and spoke want us to remove their segment or their picture, we can make that happen, or their name from the webinar as well. So just let us know. You can email me and I'll work with Heather on that.
And you should know that we're available. Like, call us. Like, my number's like I gave it out at convocation, 704-651-4810. I actually pick it up. So just know that there's more that you need to say, or a story to tell, or something else, that we're available. And I know Heather and Nicole and Celeste feel the same way. So we're here.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all coming out. Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much.
And hang in there, everyone.